It was held on 22nd of October. The President would have been around the chair. The minutes. There were no fines, no questions, no reports to be read. There were no motions on notice, and there were no motions not on notice. Last week, we had the tax debate on the motion that this House regrets big government tax intervention, which sounds like a boring motion. Certainly, that was the opinion of our sponsors, the Tax Institute. Myself and one or two other council members met a couple of their representatives before the debate when they said, wow, the film set such interesting motions over the last couple of weeks. Why do one about tax? And slowly we exchanged a look and began to wonder the same thing. Thankfully, we had two fascinating characters to speak as guests in proposition, and they were pretty funny, though it did crush step on stream, personally delivering all. The first guest was Alex Wild, an investment banker. He was chosen to cultivate a cocaine habit in lieu of raising a family. Who just and drunk he no longer loves. And the burdens Jamie Oliver. I don't think I'm sorry. Against the love of TV Shack. Just last week, he tweeted, I said Jamie Oliver to leave his national for later on the internet. Such a great. He's just an internet trend. Just a few months ago, it's clearly the best day of Snowden's life. His reaction was so good. It wasn't even clearly delighted terrible crime had happened to Jamie Oliver and his young family. Seeing the reaction to that news now, sitting back and smoothly grinning between thick bursts of blueberry flavoured water vapor. Take cigarettes, crowd's possession. Take that, you evil chef. Now for the business.
Mr. Secretary, the time for questions is now open. Questions is second. So, privilege motion number 6, motion of congratulations for Christopher Costigan and Owen O'Gorman for breaking the final close. I think that we
We just got given it. No, we got given it. No.
Hello, yes.
Prize for the guest that canceled the 331st session.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Public Business of the Society. Without any further ado, I'd like to invite our registrar, Mr. Keith Henry, to read out the last minutes of the last public business meeting.
An ordinary public business meeting of the University Philosophical Society was held on the 22nd of October, President Leading the chair. The motion was this House regards big government tax intervention. The first speaker was Stephen Barr, who was very angry about tax, although with such a thick northern accent, he sounds angry about everything. On the opposition, meanwhile, we had the heroes of the ordinary working man, Patrice Lavelle, originally of Blackrock College fame, back from his Erasmus in Paris for one night only, and Mr. Eamon Fionn-McGarry, alumnus of St. Andrew's College, or as his friends call him, Amo. But the real star of the show was, of course, the Phil's treasure, Stepan Rook, who is having the time of his life, sitting there on that bench between Alex Wilde and Chris Snowden, gazing lovingly into their eyes and sharing a grin whenever the opposition made a point against tax, his palms slowly moistening. And then workload was over and he got to make a speech where he insisted that no one actually needed social benefits. After all, none of his friends had ever needed them. And had replaced any further points with a series of almost erotic analogies between free market capitalism and farm animals, like, oh, the suckling pig that is the state riding the muscular back of the stallion of the free market. Being no further business leader.
Are there any objections to me signing these minutes as a true and accurate record of the last private business meeting? Thank you, Stefan. That is duly noted and signed. Welcome to the Liferaft Debate tonight. This is a debate outlining the very likely scenario whereby we find ourselves confronted by the end of the world as we know it. So what we have tonight is a single dinghy left containing some of the world's finest thinkers, and there remains only just one seat on this dinghy. These fine lecturers here tonight are here to compete for their spot along with the spot of their discipline on this dinghy and to survive the end of the world. So who decides the destiny tonight? It will be us. I would remind you to have a look at your seats where you can decide who you prefer. So I don't know, how do we start? Do we say first, second, third, preference? Oh, just X the one person you prefer. Because yeah, only one person surviving. Ruthless. That's fantastic. And so speaking on behalf of music tonight, we have Mr. Richard Duckworth. On behalf of European history, we have Dr. Graham Murdoch. For computer science, we have Dr. Mike Brady. And for philosophy, Dr. Alice Pinero-Walla. And then the devil's advocate tonight, who will be arguing that no one deserves to have a place on this dinghy and that all of these disciplines should die, will be David Kenny of the School of Law. Speeches are a maximum of 10 minutes length for all of the lecturers, and they will have protected time in their first minute. So after the first minute, you'll hear a bell which sounds as so. At which point we invite the audience as well as the other lecturers to offer their points of information. This is an interjection in someone's speech, so you may stand up and say, "Sir, madam," and if you're accepted, offer a 10-second remark or one sentence or so, and if not, please stand right back down. If you don't have the confidence to go for points of information or just kind of like a bit more bitter, you can also show that you disagree by saying shame, or you can also give approval by shouting "hear, hear." So there's many options to be involved tonight. And as I said, anyone is welcome to offer a point of information, and audience participation is very encouraged. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Richard Duckworth to open the case for music.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm here from the Department of Music, and I'm hoping you reserve a place for me on the raft once you hear my case and realize how entwined music is with human society and with cognitive development. Indeed, you will see how the very survival of the raft could depend on whether music is brought on board as a passenger. Now, I've always considered the label for my own sub-discipline, music technology, to contain redundancies. For music itself, as neuroscientist Anirudh Patel tells us, can be considered to be a transformative technology of the mind. Once discovered, it was embraced by our ancestors because, like fire, it enhanced human experience. Aesthetically, emotionally, and socially. So, whether music is a serendipitous byproduct of neurophysiology, resulting from cross-modal interactions transmitting between different sensory cortices of the brain, or if it arose as a result of adaptations of lower-level brain areas utilized for sonic profiling and timbre apprehension, it matters little. The fact remains that our early human ancestors discovered it, and it became a universal because it confers certain advantages. So we'll look at some of those now. Speaking from an evolutionary perspective, one of the main advantages conferred is that of social cohesion. Music fosters solidarity, and it promotes altruism within human social groups. Robin Dunbar posits the entirely plausible theory that music, in the form of group singing, replaced physical grooming in early human societies. The payoff was delivered in the form of endorphin release. And as any performer, or listener for that matter, will confirm, musical activity is pleasurable. And so the quite pleasurable fur grooming was substituted by the equally gratifying choral singing. The primary advantage here was that the group singing requires no physical contact. So the second benefit is that social groups could grow. You can only groom one person at a time, but you can vocalize with several. So larger viable human proto-societies were born. Music is in the quadrivium for a reason. As you will see, for one needs mind power to create what Clifford Geertz would have described as the web of significance that music suspends us in. Music occurs within our crania. Humans have big brains. Shake any tree around outside and some primatologists will fall out and they will tell you that brains are expensive. Our brains are on average 9 times larger than the typical volume for a mammal our size. This cerebral overhead consumes 20% of our energy intake. So every 5 slices of pizza you eat, 1 slice of pizza goes to the brain. Even though by volume it only accounts for 2% of our body mass. So it's only 2% of the brain, 20% of the energy. Such a resource-hungry physiological structure must contribute some leverage. And for us, some advantages are sophisticated problem-solving abilities, the ability to form and negotiate social groups, color vision, and one of the most sophisticated ear-brain systems in the natural kingdom. Having been given the gift of an auditory system capable of 360-degree localization and auditory scene analysis, no doubt for the purposes of predator avoidance, is it any wonder that serendipitous neural rewiring occurred on account of the highly plastic nature of the human synaptic architecture, and that the sonic cathedrals of music were born? It's bound to happen.
Point. If it's bound to happen anyway due to what happens in your brain, why do you think the new world would need your discipline that not happen
Get it. Neuroscience TEDx muso guru Psyche Louis attributes the pleasurable effects of music to the warm-up effect it has on the brain. Music facilitates the types of cerebral constitutional that operates polymodally on the different specialized cortices simultaneously. A type of synaptic workout, if you will. Like all workouts, this one is beneficial, synaptically speaking, and so the brain has evolved to encourage endorphin release when music is experienced. You'll be missing that if you don't bring me along. In addition, cross-modal interactions between different brain areas associated with auditory processing and areas dedicated to non-audio or non-musical tasks or processes are well documented in the literature. To the layperson, these effects can be experienced when they combine musical activities with physical pursuits that rely for coordination on the parts of the brain dedicated to motor activities. So when your raft members are weary, it is to music that they will want to turn in order to enliven the drudgery. They will bring the galley alive with their shanties, and the days at sea will fly by. Semantics. To be able to understand each other in your new society, you will need musical ability, because any semantic meaning not carried by prosody is carried by intonation. That musical undulating pitch or tone in our voices. If I can present an example from the Terminator franchise, the tendency of the somewhat aprosodic T-800 cyborg to vocalize without convincing cadential patterns is a sonic signifier of the fundamentally robotic nature of these machines. And so John Connor is told, "Your foster parents are dead." The antagonist in this tale the next generation T-1000 Terminator, can, on the other hand, imitate John Connor's step-parents perfectly, or at least to a level of competency that can lead their son to believe that they are still alive. The T-800s are capable of some nuance outside of their imitative routines, though in another scene, the nutshell definition of an exotic, futuristic type of electronic brain is conveyed with a cadential emphasis. My CPU is a neural net processor, a learning computer. The point that the Raft crew should take away from this is that there is a considerable potential for misunderstanding when presented with pure speech bereft of cadence, and that this ambiguity could prove fatal in those inevitable instances when life or death decisions have to be made. Porosity would not be enough. While on the subject of learning computers rather, it is worth mentioning that the literature abounds with studies that show even a few music lessons at an early age can result in elevated IQ levels. Yet another point of consideration for the Raft crew: can you afford to have stupid offspring when you reach your destination and build your new society? To conclude, I'd like to present...
What if all you can bring is like Gareth Brooks, but all your Liferaft members just want to like do MDMA and listen to Deep House?
To conclude, I'd like to present the Raft people with their certain prospects if they leave me behind. If they do not take music along, then they will quickly de-evolve into amnesiac, microcephalic, grunting, pin-headed primates. Without the ritual solidarity of musical activity, they will live out their days, picking bugs out of each other's hair in the hope of receiving reciprocal favors. They will be unable to communicate effectively. The collective IQ of their offspring will plummet. Effectively, the exclusion of music will quickly set humankind back over 100,000 years in evolutionary and in cultural terms. And they will surely perish as, when the time comes, they'll be unable to tell the difference between a floating rubber movie prop and a 3,000-kilogram great white shark.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you, and thank you to the Society for their kind invitation to be here. I make here a double case for my discipline of history. The first will be moral, and the second will be practical. And by the time I'm finished, it will be clear to you that the only sane, rational choice is to embrace the discipline of history on your life raft. And in that leap of mental imagination onto this post-apocalyptic, that's oxymoronic, look it up in the dictionary later, apocalyptic context of a life raft, we should imagine ourselves here in this room as if in such a life raft, for do the waves of ignorance and capitalism not lap against the walls of this august institution and this fine society. At every turn, people are ready to tell you that you are but an assemblage of bones and meat. You're only here upon this earth to buy things, to consume things, to make money. You have no higher purpose, you have no higher function than to be a unit of capitalist exchange in our economy. But thankfully, during this brief window of opportunity until the next government makes you pay fees, during this brief window of opportunity, you're able to indulge the life of the mind, to find out something of what it means to be a human being. And in that endeavor, on that journey to that distant shore of self-discovery, there is only one discipline here presented worthy of that challenge, and it is mine. Because the keynote to history, the reason why history over 2,500 years has reigned as the queen of sciences is because we inculcate that key essence of what it is to be you, or the version of you that you would like to become. And that is, sit down, lawyer. Whenever a lawyer looks at his watch, watch your wallet, they're after you. The keynote to being human, which a lawyer would never understand. And that is to inculcate in your own heart and spirit human empathy. Empathy for others. To stand outside yourself, to stand out with your own needs, wants, and desires, and to imagine what it is to be someone else, to live in a distant shore, to be of a different place, to be of a different time, to be of a different context in society, to place or attempt to place your mind in yours, to walk in their shoes, to try to think as they thought. And that is the collective endeavor that we have been on for these millennia, searching after not some fine details of how things really were in the past, but how things really are with us. And that is the keynote of our endeavor. And as you sit upon this life raft, what will be the obsession that meets your mind? A desire to whistle a tune? I don't think so. A desire to know how to make a contract? I hope not. No, you will desire to think not how comfortably can I sit upon this life raft, or how can I extend my life on this life raft. You'll want to know, why should I not jump in the water and get away from this? All your family gone, all your society gone, everything you knew of comfort gone. You need something to guide you, to inculcate you in that life and journey of empathy. And I am here to help. If you didn't like the emotional appeal, the moral appeal, then let's think of the practical appeal, because there are some who think that they can live without history, that we are not necessary, that we are not profitable, that we are not practical, that we serve no particular purpose within a society, and we should be sacked and made way for a tea room or some computers or some other nonsense that this institution might place in our stead. But think briefly of 3 examples from the distant and recent past of societies who embarked on that journey, who thought they could live without history, who wanted to build something new, who wanted to live without empathy. In the French Revolution in 1793, they said history is dead. We live in year 1. All is fresh, all is new, all is shiny. Within a year, 50,000 people were executed at the guillotine because they sought to destroy empathy. In 1929, the government of the Soviet Union declared that time was changed. There were 6 days in the week and you should work 5 of them. And they declared that the old calendar was dead and the old world was dead and we were going to live as new men and new women. By the time that experiment was over, 8 million citizens of the Soviet Union were dead. Final example from 1975. Sit down, lawyer. Final example from 1975. In Cambodia, they declared year 0. We don't need history. We have lawyers now. And by the end of 2 years, a quarter of the population was dead. In other words, if you choose to embark upon this life raft without the one discipline that provides you with that essential moral quality of inculcating empathy for others, you will find as night follows day that you will have become either a murderer or murdered. I would suggest to you that neither is a fate that you wish to embrace, so the sane moral choice, the only sane moral choice which you can take this evening for self-preservation and the preservation of the essence of your character, is to vote for history. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to tell you in the next few minutes why it's so important that I should get the seat on the raft. We're in a tight spot, as you know, and I want to tell you what computer science in general, and me in particular, as a computer scientist and as an educator, can bring to the party, so to speak. So I think it was George Clooney's character, wasn't it, in Oh Brother, where they kept saying we're in a tight spot. But we are definitely in a tight spot here. UCD is gone, right? Stillorgan is gone. I'm sure you saw the glow in the sky there the other day. I think Trinity is gone, but it's never really quite clear whether it's gone or not. The Dart is gone, taxis are gone, ATMs are gone, Casey Peaches is gone. The Hist is gone. And you know, when they're gone, they're definitely gone. So let me tell you a few little stories to try to put across my case for sealing the deal on this seat on the raft. The very first thing is, we actually don't know too much about what's going on, right? We know we're on the raft, and if we're going to rebuild society, we're probably going to not be able to do it on a raft, okay? We're probably going to need, just a point, we're just going to need landfall somewhere. So suppose we did land somewhere, suppose we found land somewhere. Wouldn't it be nice to land near, say, a power station or something like that that we might be able to use? I'm getting a little practical here for a minute. That we might be able to use to start our society again. Now, actually, it probably should be a nuclear power station because they don't need much more fuel. So let's imagine we found one, right? So we'd say, as quick as you could say Fukushima, you'd be in there and you'd be trying to hook it up and power up your new society. But you couldn't do that because it's full of computers, madam.
Would the water not have destroyed all the electronics?
Certainly not. No, let's imagine. I did say it was functional. Okay, so let's imagine it's there. We can't get into it because it's going to be controlled by computers. We wouldn't even get in the door. Okay, so what we need is somebody like, say, Justin Long in Die Hard 4, or maybe that guy, what was his name? I have it here. Jeff Goldblum in Independence Day. Sir?
They're both actors.
I can see you're thinking very concretely there, I think. So those characters were able to just get their computers to do everything. So we need somebody like that, and I put myself forward modestly as that person. In reality, in the old world that we've left behind, of course, we know that computers have infiltrated everything from banking, communication, energy. Everything is computer controlled. So if we want to use any parts of the old world in our new world, we're going to have some understanding and some knowledge of computer technology, the computer technology that we would be able to use to reboot, if I may use that word, our new society. Okay, so that's me. That's my. That's one reason for me to be on the raft. So let me give you a second story. Let me give you a second reason. One of the things that probably wouldn't be in this new world, initially at any rate, is music, recorded music. It'll be gone because all the technology that drives it is gone. So there'll be no music. In particular, there'll be no country music, right? You might not think that's such a bad thing. Okay. But you just think about country music, you know, where you have all that fighting and all that shooting and all that feeling and all the drinking and all the spraying and all the losing your dog and losing your gun, losing your love and fantasies cheating on you with your neighbor's wife and all that kind of stuff. So there is actually a joke about that, right? And it is, what would happen if you played country music song backwards? Right? Well, you probably guessed it. You get your dog back, you get your gun back, you get your wife back, I suppose, and you get all that stuff back in reverse order, more or less. So my question is, what would happen if you played civilization or society backwards? Because that's surely before us here, unless we do something. We have the old world is dead and the new world, what Matthew Arnold said, the new world is. I can't remember what he said. He said something about it not being possible to be born. So what are we going to do if the civilization that we've known spins backwards, like the country music song? What are we going to lose? Well, we're going to go back through the modern age, through the Enlightenment, through, we'd say, the Renaissance, through the
the Dark Ages, so-called, back through the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic, and back to a time when the only professionals roaming the earth were lawyers, I think. So we'd have a definite problem there. So if we could catch that spinning backwards civilization as quickly as possible, then we might have a chance of reconstructing a new society that was actually better than the old one. And I would argue that the first thing we would lose as society spun backwards would be computer science, right? Computer science really came into its own in the mid-1930s with Alan Turing. You might have seen him in an old film called, was it The Imitation Game? Benedict Cumberbatch, you know, lovely. Okay. It was fairly recent in the history of scientific thought. And what was discovered then was a scientific way of figuring out what needs to get done. That's what computer science is. Not doing it, of course, but figuring out what needs to get done. So if we lost that, we would lose not just the technology of computers, which I've already made a point we need, but also the actual theory of computer science. We lost that, we would not be able to construct a new society moving onwards. We wouldn't be able to do that. We just wouldn't have the intellectual ability to do it. We'd have to rediscover it in the future. So I think that's a pretty good argument there for me, being the representative of computer science, and also, by the way, an educator, to be able to bring this stuff in, these ideas in, and to be able to put them forward to you and to your children. And I'll talk a bit more about that later as well. So that's the second thing. And then actually this kind of thing has happened before. So the Black Death in the 1340s and 50s, I wasn't around, but I hear, I hear that it was very bad, and I hear that reports were that 50 or 60% of the population was wiped out. And it could be argued that the dislocation that caused in society was enabled new ideas, new society, new arrangements of people, like the feudal system, which was on its last legs, died. I'll come to your point later. Okay, thank you. And so it could be argued that the fracture caused by the Black Death allowed, say, the Renaissance to flourish, feudalism to die out, new ideas, new scientific methods and mathematics and so on to come to the fore. So there's a thought. And if you think about that, what do you want to bring to your new society? What new ideas do you want to bring that will form your new society? I would argue that computer science, that is the science behind figuring out what it takes to get things done, is one of those wonderful things that will shape your society for the better, for the better. So I want to just bring on the fourth of the three things I was going to mention. Sorry, computer scientists don't really count very well. And that is, it's a rather delicate matter. So I'll tell you a story about it, perhaps to introduce it. And I'm not sure whether it's going to be in my favor or not, but in the interest of honesty and so on, I think I should mention it. So I had a friend who sadly is now passed away with the rest of the world. And let's call him John. He was a computer scientist, and one day he found a talking frog, and he spoke to the frog, and the frog was very happy with the frog. But he came to me looking for advice because the frog was unhappy, and he said, "You know, the frog is great, but it keeps wanting to have me kiss it because it'll turn into a princess, and it's saying that it will become my girlfriend, and it'll marry me." And we'll have kids, and it's the princess's father is the king, and we get land and houses and kids and all that kind of stuff. What am I going to do? And I said, well, you know, you're a computer scientist. You know, you couldn't possibly have time for a girlfriend or a wife. Or but a talking frog is really cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, I put that to you as a sign, perhaps, that we might not take part in this great duty that you all have to repopulate the world. I'm not quite sure whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I give you this as the fourth reason that I should be on the raft. Thank you very much.
philosopher, we must start with a deeply philosophical question. Why save the bloody philosopher? I was talking to a few friends about this invitation to the Liferaft Debate, and one person noticed, look, this question presupposes the assumption that a philosopher could not possibly survive the nuclear attack. But as a matter of fact, we survived the death of God. I didn't mention that. Yeah! Another friend suggested mentioning our amazing transferable skills, but I thought that was not a good argument. Okay, so why save the philosopher? I will try to argue that it is in the interests of the survivors to save the philosopher, because the philosopher herself would prefer not to prolong the sea of troubles and just end with the rest of humanity with dignity and stoicism. But I will argue that there are good reasons to save the philosopher. Now, why the philosopher? Philosopher seems so useless, right? When people ask me, what do you do? Oh my God, I say, I'm a professor at Trinity. But what do you teach? Oh, things. Interesting things. Full of question marks. Are you perhaps a philosopher? So when you think of a philosopher, you think of someone who has no clue, has nothing to do with the world. So how is a philosopher going to help rebuild society from scratch? I would like to point out that in authoritarian regimes, the first people who seem to go, the first ones who are silenced, are the thinkers. So there seems to be, even though philosophers look so stupid, there seems to be something about ideas that is dangerous. And not only that, that matters. Ideas can really change our lives. How is that? Okay. You may think, okay, if we say this philosopher perhaps will help us think clearly. You know, the philosopher will not put up with crappy arguments and so on. But then you may ask yourself, why do we need that? Imagine that famous Monty Python sketch of the philosophers playing football. We try to rebuild society. There is the ball, and the game starts, and they start. In all directions. Thinking too much may be paralyzing. So why do we need a philosopher? Okay. What do we need in order to build society from scratch? Well, it seems that first of all, we would have to build some houses, perhaps find the means of subsistence. And for this, we would need some institutions, a minimal form of government, some minimal form of rules in order to enable cooperation. But then you might say, the bloody philosopher is gonna build the government. Come on. Perhaps the philosopher cannot build a house. Well, most certainly cannot. But there are some foundations that we can build. Foundations upon which these institutions and our practices in society can be based upon. And this is what the philosopher can do, help us think about the kind of society we want to live in. We need reasons.
Would there be anything to be said for taking actual physical foundations with us rather than, say, philosophical foundations? We could build actual houses.
My dear lawyer, there is something called an analogy. Now, what are these even when we think about things, we become masters of our own lives. Now you might say, this is a philosopher's illusion to believe that we can actually have some control over our lives. And we tend to be very pessimistic about it. But I would like to point out that there are a lot of people out there controlling your lives, and they very well believe that they can do so. Let me mention the B word, bankers. Okay. Now, what the philosopher can do to you, and this she will do unwillingly, because I said she would rather die the free stoic death in the sea of troubles, is to help us make sense of our lives, which is a deeply human character. Right? Besides that, if you have the philosopher in the raft, the philosopher will also be highly entertaining. Think about all the thoughts experiments we know that we could entertain you with. And we could also play conceptual analysis. Besides, I can also sing. We care about these crazy ideas. As I was telling you, we care about reasons, we care about justification. Just living like that without making sense is not good enough. So it seems that even though the philosopher cannot build houses, cannot repair computers, the philosopher can do something that is very, very important, even though it doesn't look like it. It can help us make sense of our human existence. Now, there might be even evolutionary reasons why we are wired like that we need justification, we need to debate, we need to exchange reasons. But evolution won't do the dirty job for us. You may employ a professional for that. I would actually do for free. Okay? The other thing is, as dictatorships, authoritarian regimes have proved, I mentioned this before, philosophers go very quickly. And in the history of philosophy, there are some who have been murdered for influencing society. Now, it could be that the person you will be saving will not last long. So that would be perhaps one economic argument for saving. But anyway, even if that philosopher becomes too much and is, that philosopher will be able to plant the seeds of sedition. Because philosophy is actually deeply rebellious. Thinking is an act of rebellion. What could be more revolutionary? What could be more rebellious than trying to make sense in face of chaos, in face of violence, in face of destruction? Philosophy would be an act of survival. Let's survive, but not without philosophy. Thank you, guys!
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite our devil's advocate, David Kenny, who will be arguing that none of these fine lecturers should be given a spot on a Liferaft.
Thank you very much, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen. This debate is a sham, and a fraud, and a sham. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I found out when I arrived here tonight that the devil's advocate box has been removed from your ballot papers. That's how dangerous an idea this is, ladies and gentlemen. That's how wedded you are to academia. You're not even being allowed to choose against it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, a devil's advocate is usually someone who defends the indefensible, a perfect job for a lawyer, or indeed makes an argument that they disagree with. Of course, neither of those things is true here. I think there is nothing more defensible than leaving a pack of academics to the fate nature clearly intended us to have if the world ever came to an end, because let's face it, we are not survivors. And there is nothing more fun than listening to a group of academics, ladies and gentlemen, trying to defend our own existence. This is not the first time we'll have done this. In fact, we'll have done it at more or less every dinner party we've ever gone to, where a concerned taxpayer asks why exactly they are funding our completely baffling lifestyles. And ladies and gentlemen, just as tonight, we try and explain to them what we do in a non-condescending way. And condescending in this context means to talk down to. Now, at a dinner party, typically you don't have the option of casting people overboard to their death. Here you do, ladies and gentlemen, and I ask you to embrace it. It's the one chance you'll get to tell us where to go. But why should we rid ourselves of the disciplines that have spoken so well for their own existence tonight? Well, let's see. We had, from history, marinated in hateful anti-lawyer rhetoric, which shows you what historians are really all about, ladies and gentlemen. What we might call some contradictory lessons. We will, unless you embrace history, nothing awaits you but being a drone, an automaton for capitalism, ladies and gentlemen. But of course, if you forget history, communism, ladies and gentlemen, communism is dead. We'll all be wiped out. So just two lessons from history. One, don't be capitalist, and two, don't be communist. So just do those things, ladies and gentlemen, which of course should be easy to execute with Graham on your side, and you're laughing. But it's also wonderful to see historians try to be practical. It's in fact one of my favorite spectator sports. Sure, it's not early modern Spain right now, but who knows what tomorrow will bring, ladies and gentlemen. What if you're facing down the moors? What if you're not sure whether or not to have an inquisition? Then we'll be there with lessons, ladies and gentlemen. But of course, if you ever got a lesson from a historian, it would have more caveats than a financial services ad, saying, well, of course, really the circumstances of early modern Spain are so difficult that you can't take anything from this at all. So, ladies and gentlemen, ultimately you can do without this, and you can do without Graham. But what if you wanted to write your own histories? Well, surely historians can analyse your problems and give you a timely and pertinent account of their causes. Well, that's true if by analyse and explain we mean create a vaguely plausible narrative that may or may not bear any actual resemblance to what's happened to you, and if by promptly we mean within 30 to 50 years, then Graham is your man, ladies and gentlemen, and feel free to take him with you. But what about computer science? Now, this is a hard one because computer scientists actually do things, and frankly it's unfair to put someone in a practical discipline in with people from the arts and humanities, ladies and gentlemen. We prefer malingering in our own uselessness. However, I still think there are reasons why Mike should go overboard. The first is that despite his best efforts, it is apparent that computer science is a discipline that is no crack, ladies and gentlemen. Seeing Mike try to convince you otherwise is like seeing your super intense friend trying to tell a joke, right? And it goes something like, how many computer scientists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, because we are really good at what we do. We only need one of us. And this is the problem with taking Mike along. He seems great, but I just don't trust that computer science will add to joy in this hellscape that we will be living in. And then we had the argument, basically boiling down to, imagine a world without Snapchat, ladies and gentlemen. What if computer scientists were not around? You'd be painting things on cave walls and washing them off 10 seconds later. It just wouldn't work. What's protecting us from a second dark ages? Computers somehow. And if we lose them, who knows where we'll slide back to. I don't believe it, ladies and gentlemen. I take fully the point of our member of the audience who pointed out that typically in an apocalyptic scenario, you lack two things that computer scientists need. One is computers, and the other is electricity. If you find some electricity somewhere, ladies and gentlemen, I strongly urge you to keep it for heat and light, and not fund a computer so that Mike can program something like Call of Duty pre-modern warfare. Our experiences. So ultimately, I say no. But what about philosophy, ladies and gentlemen? We were told that authoritarian regimes often silence the thinkers. And after listening to 5 speeches tonight, ladies and gentlemen, you might be tempted to sympathize. But ultimately, we were told that philosophy is really practical and useful in a new world. And of course, we all know this because of how many philosophy graduates go on to get great top jobs in Dublin's big philosophy firms, building philosophical foundations, ladies and gentlemen. There is no more practical pursuit. I commend it to you. But of course, as Alice pointed out, it was an analogy. It was an analogy that I think she never quite finished. And that's a very important lesson, ladies and gentlemen. Always finish your analogies. An unfinished analogy is like a painter that, you can work out the rest. But perhaps, ladies and gentlemen, philosophers can give us reason. They can help us with those tough moral questions. And we can all relate to this. Because I, for one, am ethically paralyzed unless I have my local philosopher on speed dial, ladies and gentlemen, talking me through life's difficult choices. But if, in fact, you encounter a difficult moral scenario in a brave new world, let's imagine that you face a choice between killing one of your own and eating their corpse, or all starving together. Would it really help if Alice were there going, well, actually, this is a balance between deontology and consequentialism? What do we all think? Huh? The only way that solves that problem is if someone sticks a spear through the philosopher out of frustration and we agree it would be a waste not to eat the corpse. But in that situation, we should pick the most delicious person, not the most philosophically literate, to sit on the raft. So, ladies and gentlemen, I urge you against voting for philosophy. Which brings us finally on to music, or why not bring endorphins, ladies and gentlemen? Endorphins will help us. And as I understand it, with music, things work out like Terminator. Not necessarily what we want. Killer robots in a post-apocalypse might make things worse. But ultimately, I want to say this. I am not against bringing music with us. But instead of bringing Richard, how about we bring a load of records? Who's with me? Or indeed a badass harmonica type instrument that I don't know the name of, which is deadly. I suggest, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a controversial proposition, I suggest that we might be able to listen to and even appreciate music if Richard is not there. I know. Without Richard, it just might work. Another controversial statement, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think that Richard invented music. Okay? I don't think Graham invented history. I don't think Mike invented computers. And I think there may have been at least one philosopher before Alice. My point here being, ladies and gentlemen, you can do these things. And this brings me on to the reason I wanted to be devil's advocate today. It's not just because I enjoy ragging on my incredibly talented colleagues. That is not the only reason I did it. Nor is it because it would be farcical to try and defend law of all things. I mean, really, what could you even say? Lord of the Flies would have been fine with lawyers, am I right? There is just no credible argument to make. It's not just because of that. It's because I think the premise of this debate is wrong. I think the premise of the debate assumes that you need us. And I think that gets the college backwards. We are here for you, not you for us. You can do these things, ladies and gentlemen, without us. But without you, we would genuinely be lost in a purposeless mess of trying to fill the long hours between morning and nighttime. And ladies and gentlemen, we can help you in college, we can suggest things to you, we can guide your learning and maybe even speed it up. But ultimately, you would all still be the brilliant people you are with or without us. Everyone else in this debate has something to recommend to you. But all I have to recommend to you is you. You can do all this without us. And since you don't even need my recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to toss us all overboard and sail on, unimproved and unimpeded by everything we have had to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Kenny, and indeed to all of the lecturers here tonight. I think they deserve another round of applause. So I remind you guys to fill out these ballots, and as we said, just pick your favourite person, no proportional representation, as I suggested originally, and hand them over to Tom and Izzy after these announcements. So next week's debate is This House Believes You Cannot Own an Idea, same place, same time. In terms of guests that we have coming to the film next week, on Tuesday at 2 p.m. we have Fabiola Gianotti, who is the first female director of CERN, an Italian particle physicist. And on Wednesday we have Ed Catmull coming, co-founder of Pixar, as well as president of Walt Disney Animations. And he's going to be here on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Both incredibly interesting people. In terms of competitive debating, we have novice sign up for Oxford on the board outside, as well as on Facebook. And check out Facebook for drop-ins and weekly workshops, as well as all of our other events. Always keep an eye out there. We're having drinks in our council room tomorrow from 6 p.m. onwards, kind of spooky Halloween drinks, which can act as pre-drinks for anyone who's going to masquerade, or just at the beginning of a good night with the Phil for anyone who wants to stay on afterwards. There'll be a bit of both happening. And other than that, we'd like to invite you to our reception next door, and then we'll be going to Doyle's at 10 p.m. Thanks so much, everyone.
Smile.